have a package. Hello?
No matter where you are, the Sloman Shield home security system guards your home. With next-gen perimeter protection, 24/7 monitoring, and interior motion sensing. And right now, get a free Sloman Shield security system and doorbell camera, all professionally installed, for free.
Shield your world, the Sloman Shield.
All right. AEW Dynamite off the air. So that means right now it is time for Squared Circle Digest. Sean Stanley here on the Big O Radio Show YouTube channel. It is the AEW Dynamite recap. The St. Patrick's Day Slam, and fantastic show. It was energy from the crowd. It is so weird, the difference in the energy between an AEW crowd and a WWE crowd. I almost feel like, like the WWE crowd is trained to be the way that they are at the Raws and the SmackDown, kind of reactionary, whereas the AEW fan is more of the, let me see if I can try and hijack some of the show. I witnessed a great main event, a steel cage women's championship match. Dr. Britt Baker loses her title to Thunder Rosa in Thunder Rosa's hometown of San Antonio. And that match, they gave you the big feel, right? You had the mariachi band playing out Thunder Rosa. Britt Baker came out paying homage to Scott Hall with the outfit that she had on and the jacket. Just the big time feel. Yes, this is your TBS AEW Dynamite show, but man, they made it mean something. And that's that emotional investment that you end up getting the crowd to get behind, and you get the crowd the way it was. The little dueling chants. I mean, you had, DMD, Thunder Rosa, DMD, Thunder Rosa. That's what you want for your main event. And those ladies left it all in the ring, chairs, thumbtacks, blood, everything there, meaning, again, making that AEW title mean something. And that's what this is all about, right? They are trying to build this AEW women's division up. And, I know today, I want to say, I believe it was Frankie that made the comment that they need to build up the AEW women's roster. And I believe it was Frankie. If it wasn't, I apologize for putting you out there, Frankie. But I don't necessarily know that they need to build it up. I think they need to put more of a spotlight on on that style or that type of match the way they did tonight. Not every woman on the roster is ready to be in, a main event of Dynamite. Your Britt Bakers, Thunder Rosas, Serena Deeb, Hikaru Shida. When those they're ready. They're ready. Ty Conte is there, depending on who her opponent is. But they have the seasoning to be that main event. And what you saw tonight was the result of two very, very great athletic women going out there and leaving it all on the line. You saw the raw emotion from Thunder Rosa winning the title in her hometown. And, Dustin Rhodes out there at the end, just, again, making it mean something. When people used to win the title, there used to be the celebrations in the locker room. I remember when Hogan won his title, it was Andre pouring the champagne on him. The guys wrestling for him. When Dusty won the title, it was everybody running into the ring and Dusty was on their shoulders and all that. Those title wins meant something. And here tonight, you're seeing them make the AEW women's title mean something. I really like the way they, put the ref bump in there. Almost kind of like, oh, here we go. They're going to end up screwing Thunder Rosa out of it. And then in the end, it ended up costing Britt Baker, So ultimately, I love the way that match was laid out. The night started with a great trios tag team match, Jurassic Express and Hangman Adam Page versus Adam Cole and Red Dragon. Adam Cole ends up pinning Jungle Boy. They did a triple moonsault during that match. You saw a little bit of a gear level picked up by Hangman Adam Page. So, I know today, talking earlier on the show at 1:00, some were like, the personality of Hangman, I haven't really, picked up on it as far as him as a champion. I think you're going to start seeing that get picked up. And I think with Adam Cole as the opponent, you're going to kind of see that brought up. Brian Kalish, how you doing, buddy? Appreciate the kind words, man. Thank you so much. They did Keith Lee did a promo with Hobbs and Starks in the back, kind of going over what happened on the Rampage the Friday night before, ultimately setting up for Keith Lee being on Rampage. And later on in the night, you found out it's going to be Max Caster versus Keith Lee. Mox and Bryan Danielson took on Wheeler Yuta and Chucky T. And that match there was just to get Wheeler Yuta to the position where he went in to shake William Regal's hand, and then William Regal smacked the taste out of his mouth. And you saw him fire up, because if you listen to the commentary, William Regal said when he went in the ring, he wanted Bryan Danielson and Moxley to punch him in the face to show that fight. Well, Yuta showed that fight. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go from there. Do they pick up Yuta and bring him in that group? I think it would be a good addition to that group with a young guy, and you train him and work in there. But I would love to see where they go with this. FTR cut a promo in the back talking about how they fired Tully. The Young Bucks came in, and ultimately, I guess right now you're probably going to get FTR and the Young Bucks doing some type of program right now just to keep both of them somewhat on TV with Dark, or I don't even know where they're going to have them, because Young Bucks were on YouTube this week. So where they end up putting them, who knows at this point. As I said, Max Caster came out and cut the promo. He's going to be taking on Keith Lee this Friday night on Rampage, which is going to be kind of preempted because it goes on as soon as the NCAA tournament ends on TNT. So it's around 11-ish is when the time will be for Rampage this week. Sean, what do you think of the Hardys tonight? Dude, it's the nostalgia, right? As soon as their music hits, it's just like you go back. And and you see Jeff and you see Matt and then you see some of the moves. It's slowed down a bit. There's a step slower, but you still see all the Hardy moves. And then you saw Private Party kind of try to one up them, right, with the leg drop backflip. You can see how the Hardys, their effect on a lot of the tag teams in that division. I found it interesting that Private Party was picked. I'm pretty sure Matt Hardy probably handpicked them to be their first opponents. And then you saw at the end there, Darby Allin, and which will be taking on Butcher now on Friday Rampage. But they're building up for some type of 8-man with, it's going to end up being Andrade, probably one of Private Party or both a Private Party and one of Butcher and Blade. But at some point, you're going to probably see an 8-man tag with Sting, Darby Allin, the Hardys taking on, now it's AFO instead of AHFO. It's just the Andrade family office. So, but overall, man, I mean, it's just, how can you, when that music hits, you just got to, it brings the electricity up in the building. You felt it. You could hear it. It just takes you back, the nostalgia of the Hardys. Are they as crisp and everything as they used to be? No, but they don't have to be, man. They're the Hardys. They do that. I tell you now, that Swanton, that thing looked like it about killed. I think that was Isaiah Cassidy. I took it. It looked like Hardy just flattened them with the finish there. But hey, I'm not the one taking it, so just bombs away. But the nostalgia for the Hardys and the fact, look, man, I mean, Jeff can still go. Jorge Luis, thank you, my man. Appreciate the kind words, man. And again, man, make sure you get in on the chat here if you got questions. You don't want to get on the chat. You want to reach out to me on Twitter, Instagram. You got at Sean_Stanley11. Give me a follow. I tweet wrestling, NASCAR, South Florida sports, a little bit of everything there. So just follow me, Sean_Stanley11, Instagram and Twitter. You got a question, hit me up in the DM. It's open. So you got all of that. And then also you can hit us on email at bigoradioshow@yahoo.com. Just put wrestling question or Squared Circle Digest so we know who the question's for. And of course, you can always leave a question if you have one here in the chat on the podcast, and we will answer your question on the next show. Looking more through, you had the Jericho Appreciation Society, Jericho going through talking about, his best friend Kevin, when they got fired from WWE, called him up, again, just throwing out all the stuff that Jericho does with the little shots and the little WWE stuff in there. The Hardys and Young Bucks will be a good match if it happens. I think ultimately you're going to see it. I think you're going to see the Hardys in there with FTR. I think you're going to see the Hardys in there with the Young Bucks. And again, I don't know that you need to, do it all in the first 3 months either. Hopefully they drag it out a little bit. Maybe give it a little bit of meaning somehow. I'm not saying they got to make it for a tag team title now. That's not what I'm saying. But maybe if Matt and Jeff are at the end of, they figure, okay, our run's coming to an end. Maybe they do something with the Young Bucks and end it that way. Again, so there's so much. FTR the same way. I can see so many things happening with the Hardys in the AEW. I really can. And that's not even thinking of, the Forbidden Door, if that gets opened and you bring in the Briscoes, you bring in some of the teams from Japan and things like that. GOD. I don't know if GOD would be a great opponent for them, actually. But ultimately, again, man, the Hardys, I think they can go with anybody. I think they go, Jeff Hardy proved as a single competitor, he can go with The Undertaker. Again, they can work that style, whatever they need to. But the Hardys and Young Bucks, I want it to mean something. I don't want it to just be a match on Rampage or just a match on Dynamite. I want there to be a build-up to it. Make that's two of the most elite tag teams. Not trying to use no puns here, but two of the most elite tag teams in pro wrestling history, name-wise and talent-wise. And you got to make it mean something. You can't just throw it out there because it's just, hey, it's a match that we need to be. It's almost like the whole thing with Stone Cold when he took his ball and went home because they wanted him to do a match with Brock Lesnar, a King of the Ring qualifier, with no promotion, no nothing. They wanted Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold at Raw. And he's like, that's a money match. Why the hell am I going to do that, on a Raw? That's a pay-per-view match. And he got his stuff and he went home. And that was when Stone Cold left WWE. So ultimately it's one of those things where you need it to make sense. I agree 100%. I want to watch that. I want to see that. I want to see some of the other ones. I like the Private Party. I can't wait to see them against some of the other tag teams. I like to see them against Jurassic Express. I wouldn't mind that. Red Dragon. Any of those tag teams, man. Any of those tag teams would be tremendous. You had the Jericho Appreciation Night, pro wrestler versus sports entertainer. He said he's a sports entertainer. He's not a pro wrestler. The one thing that I did notice, and I saw it out on Twitter too, William Regal was, when he was doing his promos and things like that, it's a lot of pro wrestling. Now he comes out and he says, I'm a sports entertainer. And then Jake Hager at the end says, we're going to beat up pro wrestlers. So I'm wondering ultimately if you're going to see the Jericho Appreciation Society and the, Bryan Danielson, Moxley, maybe Wheeler Yuta, William Regal led group against each other. Maybe that'll be one of the, another, factions to take on each other. I just found it interesting that he went with that route of, sports entertainer, which is a word that WWE uses, and pro wrestler, which has been a lot associated with AEW. So we'll see where they go with that. Wardlow, Scorpio Sky. It was a good match. I thought, I don't know necessarily that I like that they let him pin Wardlow. I think I much rather had NJF jump in the ring or Sean Spears jump in the ring and just make it a disqualification. I don't think that Wardlow needed to be pinned. Not that it really takes away from him because he took the steel pole and then all that stuff there, but ultimately I didn't like the fact that they had him pinned. I mean, I get it. Scorpio Sky probably needs to be built up a little more, but you saw what happened. I think it could have been just a count out outside the ring. Scorpio Sky still wins, and he keeps the belt. The one thing that I jumped up in the air when I saw him come out with one belt, and then I saw fat ass Dan Lambert walk out with the other one holding up his pants, and I was so mad, so mad. I thought he finally got rid of the second belt, and now Dan Lambert's using it as a holder. Hey, Sean, love the wrestling segment, man. Congrats. Thanks, Irvin. I appreciate that, man. The other interesting thing I thought was Sean Spears, the chair shot to the head of Wardlow. You don't see a lot of chair shots to the head that much anymore. And I found it interesting, especially on TNT. You've seen it on some pay-per-views, but the fact they did it on national TV, a chair shot to the head, again, might be something that gets talked about. And then, of course, you had the Hardys, their first appearance on AEW. The Hardy Boys, our brother. I'm not sure what they did exactly. I think it was the Hardy Brothers. I found it interesting. Tony Schiavone's like, it's my first time calling these guys in a match, and it's like, I mean, come on. And he was like, JR, I know you have, and they're just, again, it's one of those things. I get it. I understand about the nostalgia, but it's like, to me, Tony Schiavone has been around enough to where he doesn't have to be like, hey, I'm so excited. I get to call a match of the Hardy Brothers, and I've never done that before. And it was just, I just found it odd that that's one of the keys to the match really was about them never having to have announced the Hardy Brothers. Like I said, overall, I thought it was a great night of wrestling. I thought it was very entertaining. The energy level in an AEW wrestling show compared to a WWE show is so crazily different. I don't even understand, I don't get what it is because I don't necessarily think that the fans are different. I almost feel like, WWE has their fans trained to where it's like, okay, we'll kind of let you know when you're going to cheer and when you don't. Like if you go to a TV taping at a Raw, if a match is not going on, they literally cut the lights out around the ring and it goes dark. And you're just sitting there looking at a dark ring for a minute and a half. And then they let you know that, hey, we're going to be coming back from break. And they hit the music of whoever's coming out a little bit before the TV, the cameras come back on so that the crowd's getting into it again. Whereas AEW, most of the time, they do the picture-in-picture when they go to break. So there really isn't a lot of downtime at their shows. And the one I went to, which was a live Rampage at the James L. Knight Center, even when there was breaks, the wrestlers came out early and kind of cut a promo to keep the crowd hyped. And I feel like that's part of the problem with WWE is it's up, down, up, down, up, down. And after a while, it's just like, hey, you had me, I'm done. And they're doing it for 3 hours. Whereas at AEW, they're doing it 2 hours. So overall, again, like I said, I would probably give it a 8. I'd say an 8 out of 10 for the show. What they needed, you saw the Hardy Brothers debut on AEW. They set up a couple matches for Friday night on Rampage. The tag team champs were in action. They did get pinned, which one of the other things I forgot to mention, the first match, Jungle Boy getting pinned by Adam Page. I much rather seen, Adam Page could have hit the knee on him, but I'd rather had Kyle O'Reilly or Bobby Fish do the pin to kind of set up that feud a little bit more. We already know Adam Cole and Adam Page are going to be feuding. I would have liked to have seen them keep the tag team titles going by somehow, having maybe Bobby Fish or Kyle O'Reilly take the pin overall. I don't think Adam Page needed to get the pin on Jungle Boy, but ultimately, I mean, again, this is nitpicking. at what was a great night of wrestling. The promos I thought were pretty good. William Regal on commentary, I thought was very interesting the way he added to the match. And then also with Excalibur, him and Excalibur going back and forth. He's like, I don't even know who the masked guy is, and kind of things there. Ultimately, I almost feel that you're going to see a very heelish turn on for Regal and that group. I think you might end up seeing a heelish turn and see where they go with those two. Hold on a minute. Sorry, just got some come across the news. I guess Jericho now is going to call himself the influencer, the big one, Chris Jericho. Another thing is like so many people take wrestling pretty literally, at least on the Twitter feeds. It was pretty funny how everybody kind of attacked Jericho. Like, oh, you're going to use real names when you don't even use your real name, because again, his real name's Chris Irvine, but Chris Jericho's wrestling name. But the whole thing was they're not using their real names either. The 2.0 guys aren't. So ultimately, it's just it's pro wrestling, people. It's pro wrestling. Some people on Twitter just take some stuff too damn serious. AKW Beats, what's up? It's going to be interesting to see what they do as he comes to the ring with Judas, and now they act like he became Judas with what he did. Ultimately, he kind of said that he felt underappreciated. He felt that Santana Ortiz didn't appreciate him. He felt that Sammy Guevara had left him and didn't appreciate him. So ultimately, he aligned himself with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. And ultimately, I want to see where they go with the group and how they build them, because I thought they did good with Inner Circle, but also I think Inner Circle, a lot of those guys were already proven. Even Sammy Guevara from an independent level was already a proven commodity. Did he get a little bit of a rub by teaming with Jericho and some of that? Yeah, definitely. But when you look at 2.0 and Daniel Garcia, they haven't got that boost yet. So it'll be interesting to see what they do to get them that boost. Because remember, with the Inner Circle, they were feuding with the Elite at the very beginning and the onset of AEW. So that right there boosted their stock very quickly. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at 2.0 and how they try to boost up their stock for them in the run at the AEW titles, or even what they're going to do with the group. The factions, there are so many factions in AEW. Andrade has one, right? You've got Regal's building one now. You had the Pinnacle, I'm thinking, is finally done. I think FTR, MJF, and Sean Spears are there, but I haven't seen them really calling themselves a team anymore. You had the Elite at one time. You've had Jurassic Express at one point was Christian, Marco. You had 4 guys there as well. But ultimately now everything's starting to wind down. You're seeing a little bit of the thing, and now it's going to be up to Tony Khan on what direction they go with this, because again, a pay-per-view just passed. It looks like they're going to keep Adam Cole and Adam Page kind of the spotlight for the heavyweight title. Jurassic Express is your tag team champions. Where are you going to go with that group there? I think AEW should give Jake Hager more of a push. Tony, I agree with you there, but ultimately, I think he needs to show something more. And I don't know if it's because of what they have him being, like the bodyguard, the muscle for Jericho, but I don't feel like it's the same Jake Hager that you saw at the end of the WWE run. And also you saw a glimpse of it in AEW. I think he needs to be more. I get it. He's a badass. He's doing MMA. I think he's undefeated still. He's a hell of a wrestler. He can shoot and things like that. But you've got to end up making him more relatable, almost like what they've done with Wardlow. To me, he's just too much damn muscle, and he just stands there looking like a statue. And then when he finally gets the microphone, it's like, we beat up pro wrestlers. It's like, thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. They need to let him be himself so he comes across relatable. Then I think you can give him a push, because right now it's just he's just a muscle right now for Jericho. So ultimately, I think you're going to end up seeing probably Hager and Jericho or end up doing the same thing they're doing with Wardlow and MJF down the line. But I think he does need more, but they need to do something to where he's not just the statue back there and every once in a while he just says 2 or 3 words. Faction's supposed to help get people over. I don't know who trying to get over with this faction. It's more just giving them a rub. The 2.0 and Daniel Garcia a rub with Jericho and Hager. Ultimately, I mean, yeah, factions are supposed, but ultimately, no, I mean, not all factions are to get people over now, though. Because I mean, when you looked at the Horsemen, I mean, all of them were already made. You look at DX, all of those guys were made. NWO, most of those guys were made. They weren't really trying to get anybody over. They would end up, putting the person that they're working against over. But I think ultimately in this faction, it's just really to push Jericho as the egomaniacal one. And then at the same time, giving the rub to 2.0 and Daniel Garcia to boost them up a little bit to face, better, maybe better talent, and then force them to, because again, 2.0 can go. I mean, they've shown when they were in NXT, they can go. Daniel Garcia has already shown that he can go as well. I mean, he's fought Bryan Danielson. He's fought Moxley. So ultimately, I don't think this is to get necessarily them over. I think it's to give them a rub and to boost them up, because the 3 of them, it's like Private Party. Private Party's a great tag team, but when they're not with anybody, it's just Private Party. It's just a tag team. And that's kind of where they were stuck at. They were just a 6-man. They were just a tag team and a singles competitor, kind of just floating over here. What do we do with them? Hey, let's put them with Jericho now, and let's try to see if they can get a rub, because Guevara doesn't need them, and Santana Ortiz sure as hell don't need them, and they haven't needed them for a while. So now it gives Jericho something fresh to do, and it allows him to, change a little bit and become the maniacal one, which might be maybe closer to what he sometimes is, maybe turned up a little bit, But I think ultimately it's going to be good, I think, for both of them, because you're going to see Jericho's range a little bit now, and then also he gets to help out some young guys. I just want to see who they end up pairing them with and who their first. Ultimately, it's going to be Santana Ortiz and Kingston. But I want to see which group they go against. Is it Jericho and 2.0? Is it Jericho, Daniel Garcia, and Hager? That's what I'm interested to see, how they break them up and how they work. Ultimately, probably 2.0 against Santana Ortiz and tag teams and things like that. So, again, it'll freshen up. It's going to be some fresher feuds. You have to keep moving guys up and down and keep it fresh, or else it's going to turn into what WWE is. It's the same crap every week. The same match over and over. Okay, let's do it this week. Oh, you know what? This week, we're just going to put the 2 single matches together and make it a tag team this week, and nobody will know. All right. Perfect. And that's where, a lot of people have lost touch with WWE, because it really is. You could probably miss a couple weeks, come back, just turn on the show and be like, oh, okay, they're still doing the same stuff. Because there's nothing new. Nothing. It's Finn Balor and Damian Priest. It's Sami Zayn and Ricochet. It's Sheamus and McIntyre. Or sorry, Happy Corbin and McIntyre. It's it was Sheamus and New Day until the recent injury to Big E. You can see where everything's going, and there's no thought process to what WWE is doing. And as we've discussed here, I think it's lazy. It's lazy because they don't need it. They don't have to do what AEW is doing. And it's going to be interesting to see how AEW does with the NCAA tournament coming up. Because the first 2 rounds are probably going to back Rampage up. And then I don't think it'll affect because usually it's only Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it'll go to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Saturday, Sunday, and then finally Saturday, Sundays. But um, the first couple weeks are gonna push Rampage back, so Rampage is gonna be recorded. And again, Rampage is only doing 500,000 views that's on a consistent basis. They've always been about 545. Now with this being recorded and everything else, and plus it's not going to be till late. I mean, you know how the games go with the NCAA tournament. Those games are going to go till 11:30, almost midnight. So you're probably going to have them matches taped and thrown on TV at midnight. It's going to be very interesting to see where those ratings go with there. Fortunately, it won't be affecting Dynamite because right now I think Dynamite's on and up. And I want to see where their ratings are this week because I thought this show actually took a step above what last week's show was. Last week they ended up with a 9, I think it was 960 or 970. Sorry, hold on, I got it right here. 945 last week. So again, under a million. They've been under a million, almost I think 3 out of the last 4 weeks. So they've got to consistently get to that million. Then they can start making a run at Raw. Again, Raw was at 1.7 this past Monday night. I start with Dynamite because my show with Big O is on Wednesday. So Wednesday nights always start my new week when I look at the ratings that way, just so you can kind of understand how I'm looking at it. So this rating was from last week's Dynamite. And that was coming out of, that was 2 weeks removed from Revolution. So ultimately, I think AEW's got a lot of work to do, but they are putting on, to me, the better product. But for some reason, the eyes and the viewership just isn't there. I don't know what it is because when you watch the shows, there's energy. The shows go by. It's not like Raw. I'm sitting here looking at 10 o'clock. I'm like, man, there's still an hour left. Whereas with Dynamite, it's like, oh man, I got to start the show here in 5 or 6 minutes. They're like, oh, it's the main event time, and I'm like, main event? What that already? It kind of goes by because it's just constantly moving. Whereas Raw sometimes seems to drag. And I know, WWE, I think, does a great job on their vignettes, but sometimes I think they just do too many of them, man. Especially since you play them. I mean, how many times have you seen the Roman Reigns take out Brock Lesnar at MSG? They played it again last night on NXT. What the hell does that have to do with NXT? I mean, I get he's the WWE champion. SmackDown, you can play it because it's Roman Reigns is the Universal champion. I understand all that, but you're playing stuff on NXT. It's like, oh, hey, look at this great vignette we got. Man, the tribute to Scott Hall, you can play on every show you want. I get that, but it's just a consistent, it almost slows the show down when you throw the vignettes on there. Just keep the action coming. And that's what AEW, I think, does a great job at, is they keep the action going through the break. You're still watching the match. Then it comes back. It continues. The match ends. They go to a segment in the backstage. Steve, thanks, man. Steve said, you've reeled me in, Sean. I didn't even see the show tonight, but I'm here watching anyways. Thanks, Steve. I recommend you go back if you got a chance to go back and you can watch it. At least watch the main event. And if you're a nostalgia fan of wrestling, the Hardy Boys, the entrance for the Hardy Boys, I would recommend those two to watch. And on the show, those are the two high points. I thought. Agreed. The storytelling flows so much better in AEW. WWE drag out all the stories. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if they drag out 90 MFC. It's almost like I don't even know how to say it because it's not even like they do chapters at WWE. It's kind of like, all right, this is what we need to do. We need to somehow figure out how to keep these two guys fighting each other for 4 months. That's kind of how WWE, it feels like they do. Like every week they show up to TV and it's like, okay, what did we do last week? Okay, all right, okay, this week we'll do this. Whereas with AEW, it seems like each week leads up to the following week. It's not they know what's going to happen next week on AEW Dynamite. They know what's going to happen on Rampage. So now they're just building to it. Whereas at Raw, it feels like everybody shows up and they're like, okay, who showed up today? Alpha Academy. Okay, you're here. RK Bro, you're here. Okay, let's put you guys together. It just seems like there's no organization in the WWE to where it's like, and RK Bro might be a bad one to use because they're probably one of the more better stories in WWE, but the fact that it's them, Alpha Academy, Street Profits for the last, month and a half, 2 months. It's been some version of that feud for the last month and a half, 2 months. It gets old. Jericho was so good too. Yeah. I mean, the talk was good. But Jericho's got the gift of gab, man. Jericho, he understands it. He can, he's got that gift of gab to where he can kind of reel you in with his talking. AEW, AKW Beat says AEW is more interesting. I wouldn't say better than WWE. With that being said, Raw is unwatchable some weeks. Yeah, no, I mean, I think what they do is AEW has the momentum. I'll say that. AEW has the momentum and the buzz, but they haven't been able to capitalize either on that momentum. Because at one point, Raw was coming down to what, Raw was coming down as AEW Dynamite was coming up. So I was like, this might get interesting. But then it plateaued at about 1.4, I think was the lowest Raw ever got. And 1.2, I believe, was the highest Dynamite got. But at one point, it was there. It looked like, I was like, this might be a little bit of a momentum, change a little bit for this, and again, they're not going to sit there at each other and say it's competition. But when you're looking at the two product and you can see AEW's ratings rising and you can see Raw falling, you know that it's being talked about. And I didn't like the fact that AEW was happy with beating NXT at the time. That did sit a little bad with me because you're beating the developmental territory that honestly Vince McMahon at the time when Triple H was running it could give two shits about. Vince wasn't feeding that program. That was all Triple H running that and keeping it afloat. And that's why it had the feel of what AEW has. Because the machine wasn't behind it at that time. Because if the machine was behind it with what NXT was doing, it probably would have gotten better ratings than what Raw does. And Vince ain't going to allow that. Because NXT wasn't Vince's baby. Vince's baby is Raw. Vince's baby is SmackDown. NXT was Triple H's baby. And I can tell you right now, Vince is not letting anybody's babies beat his babies. I'll say it again. Vince McMahon is not allowing anybody else's babies. I don't care if it's his step or his son-in-law or not. He's not going to allow your program to one-up his. That's the whole reason the WCW and ECW invasion failed. It was not going to, what would have been best for business at that point would have at some point had kind of WCW, keep it going long enough to where you can get the NWO guys to show up to kind of start leading that. So it's not Steve Austin, the WWE guy, leading the WCW, ECW run. If you could have kept that afloat until you did bring in Hogan, Hall, Nash, some of the bigger name WCW guys, and had that go, it could have been a whole different story, a whole different business story for WWE. But Vince could not allow that. Vince could not allow that. Why? Because that's WCW. I can't allow that to happen. Vince is not going to allow anybody to beat his baby. I hear everybody say Vince will do what's best for business. I can tell you right now, nothing is good for business that's going to put anything over on anything Vince McMahon created. That's the honest truth. There's a reason Vince McMahon changes your name and puts you in a character that he wants you to be into. There's a reason. CM Punk, he kept his name. What Vince do to him? Walter right now changed his name to Gunther because he didn't want to give WWE his name. Paul Dunn is now Butch. I mean, it happens the whole time. Vince McMahon has to have that, the control. He has to have control of everything and everything. That's why, and again, I'll go back to the Chavo Guerrero Instagram post that he did. He said one of the things he didn't like about WWE is they micromanage every single thing. Vince has to have his finger on every damn thing. And then he said AEW, though, is almost the exact opposite. They don't have enough control on everything to keep everything wrangled in with such young guys, young wrestlers, and TV. Now, a lot of these guys haven't done TV before. There's a whole different thing to wrestling for TV. I remember when I went to FCW and they got the ring set up with lights so that when a light turns on, you know where you have to wrestle to. And that's how they train them to know where the cameras are. And because that's what you do with WWE. You're wrestling for that red light. Like right now, my camera light is green. That's the light that I'm working for right now. Everything else in this room is watching me. When you buy a ticket, you're watching the show. They're wrestling for all the fans out there under the red light. It's not about the thousands in attendance. It's about the millions watching at home. Because those millions turn into the thousands, which turns into millions of dollars for Vince McMahon. 90 MFC, Sean preaching here, 100% right. Vince is not being shown up. Never will happen, man. Never will happen. That guy's, I can tell you now, I think you will never know if Vince McMahon, knock on wood, nothing ever happens to him. But if something did happen to him, you'd probably never know because he would make him prop him up in a chair and he would still run it. And the indies are great, but everything on indie shows ain't good. No, I mean, listen, man, the indies, you have creative freedom. That's the one thing about the indies, and again, and it's a lot of young guys, or it's guys that have had experience that are trying to work with the younger guys and get them built up. But, again, and I'll go back to when I came in 99, 2000, if you didn't have wrestling boots, you weren't on a show. If you wore wrestling shoes and knee and kick pads and all that stuff, you weren't on a show. Except maybe, Billy Fives, who did like a karate gimmick. Again, if it's gimmick, there, but for the most part, you had to look like a pro wrestler. You had to have tights. It wasn't just like, let me wear jean shorts, or anything like that. You had to look the part. Even on the independent level, like the places I wrestled, I trained with FWA, Florida Wrestling Alliance, in Fort Pierce with Cliff Anderson and Terry Davis and Dennis Allen and Dave Johnson, Casey Thompson. Those guys all, had a hand in training me but every one of them to the T taught me how to be a professional. I got a chance to wrestle Hack Myers, who was in ECW at a time. And we were in the locker room and another guy was told to put over a younger talent. And the guy was complaining about it. He's like, you know how long I've been wrestling and I'm not going to sit out there and put this guy over and this and that. And the young man was student or graduated from the school. So the guy wanted to get him, built up his name. It's his hometown, things like that. Well, Hack went out there. Hack was supposed to go over. He changed the call in the ring and put me over. And he walked back in the back and he said, if I put somebody over, your ass will put somebody over. And that night spoke volumes to the man that Hack Myers was. And may rest in peace. But to me, that taught me so much about professionalism and what it was to be a pro wrestler. It's not about wins and losses. It's about the show, the overall show. And everybody on an indie show has a part to play in the success of said show. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be, at the Davey Rodeo Arena when Dusty Rhodes, Terry Funk, Abdul the Butcher, and Kevin Sullivan fought each other. I was I was lucky to be a match on that DVD. They're promoting it and they sold it, and just to be there and to see, the professionalism backstage, seeing how they interacted with the crowd, all that stuff, you can constantly learn, man. I mean, for the first 4 or 5 years, I was at the curtain watching every match. And every time there was somebody on the, Earthquake, may he rest in peace, Typhoon, some of these guys that would come in, I got to work them in a 6-man. You think I wasn't like a sponge with those guys? I sat there and listened to everything they had to say, why they did each move, why they set you up each time for everything. So I started understanding the little attention to details. You're not just picking up somebody to slam them down. You're setting them up to set up for your next move. So you need to know, and you're placing him where you want him to be. You'll see it every once in a while where, for instance, tonight, Private Party against the Hardys. Isaiah Cassidy. Oh, excuse me. Hold on one moment. We got to block somebody here real quick. There we go. So Isaiah Cassidy took the Twist of Fate, bumped a little bit out. As Jeff Hardy's climbing up, you'll see him kind of, lean over to the side to set up for the Swanton from Jeff Hardy. There's reasons they set up in certain ways and to parlay it into what's going to be done next. It doesn't make sense to body slam a guy on one corner, then pick him back up, and then run him into another corner, then pick him up, and then, give him a clothesline, and then pick him up, and then give him an elbow, and then throw him out of the ring, and then do a 360 plancha on him, and then you pick him up and you throw him back in the ring. Things should make sense. That's the way I was brought up, was in the wrestling business, was make every move make sense and allow it to register to the crowd. Give them the opportunity to say, oh. And you know what? I was taught more in the stiff level. I'm not going to lie. I was taught to be a little bit stiffer, lay your shots in. Apologize in the back. Lay it in. I would much rather that guy in the front row go, okay, all right. I want that line to be blurred. And again, that's the professionalism that you're seeing a lot of these guys, these young guys, learning from a lot of the professionals they're working with now. Your CM Punks, your Bryan Danielsons, you're working with Arn Anderson, Dustin Rhodes, William Regal now. You got Dean Malenko, Jerry Lynn, Tully Blanchard. FTR's been around forever. The Young Bucks have been around forever. Kenny Omega around forever. Moxley around forever. Christian Cage around forever. And you can start seeing a little bit of the influence that they're having on these guys, because these guys are improving. Everybody that you watch is improving. I haven't seen anybody getting worse. And to me, that's a good sign for AEW. Now, ultimately, are they going to be able to, battle, in the ratings? I don't know. But again, I look at Raw and I look at AEW Dynamite. Those are two shows. Chris Jericho on that list. 100% 90 MFC. 100%. I'm sorry. And we talked about him a little bit earlier, which is why I think he's with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia now, is because of that veteran, and they can work with them and see how he, handles himself backstage, which, again, I'm sure they see it every other show. But now, being as close as they are going to be with Jericho, They're going to start picking up little things. They can pick his mind. Not that they couldn't before, but now he's going to be right there. You can see him. You know, sometimes it's a matter of watching somebody. You don't think about asking a question to somebody, but when you go to the ring and you watch, you know, Chris Jericho deliver a promo and he stares right into the camera and he says what he's got to say, and then he kind of drops the mic, lets the crowd register and react to it. You know, he lets the crowd finish his singing. All the little things, you know, that's what you learn. I mean, like everybody was talking about the dog collar match and everybody's like, oh, it was so slow. Well, how fast do you want a dog collar match to be, man? They're not out there. They're not going to be able to do, you know, 360 flips. The damn dog collar attached to their necks. It's supposed to be brutal, bloody, and tell a story. And that is what those two did. And they delivered on that match. But some people poo-pooed on it because it wasn't a spot fest. What spots do you want to do with a chain around your neck? And make it make sense. It's sometimes, man, there are some people that will be upset with anything, man. I want to thank everybody that's been on today. AKW Beats, 90 MFC. We got Tony, Brian, everybody else that has tuned in. I appreciate you 100%. You guys are tremendous. Friday night, we'll be back on right after SmackDown, and not sure if we'll be able to do a Rampage, depending on if the tournament goes long or not. We usually watch the Rampage show as we break down what happens on SmackDown. Interested to see what happens on SmackDown. Brock Lesnar is supposed to confront Roman Reigns, so we'll see what happens there. But, man, appreciate everything that you guys do to help me with this program, Squared Circle Digest. Don't forget to hit the like button. Smash that like button for me on the way out. And if you know anybody that likes pro wrestling, make sure you're tuning in. We do shows after every Raw, NXT, AEW Dynamite, SmackDown, and we'll do previews for pay-per-views. Depending on WWE pay-per-views, we can probably do a post-game. But I will tell you this, AEWs won't be able to do that because they do the scrums, man. But again, thanks everybody for tuning in, or actually I should say thank you everybody for tuning in. Not sure if I'm speaking English there. And in the words of the great Gordon Soley, so long from the Sunshine State.